Hi everybody, Timothy Ferris here with a few words about the ancient mystical belief that all is one. That for all the diversity we see amongst humans and in the wider world and the universe, still they are all part of one system. Many great thinkers and meditators have maintained this. Lao Tzu, philosopher that I've always read with particular delight, once claimed that you didn't even have to look out the window to understand the entire universe, that you could see through contemplation that for all its diversity, it's one thing. Now, mystics have said a lot of things in history that didn't turn out to be factual. When I was young, no one had yet seen or photographed the far side of the moon, for instance, and there's a huge crater at the center of the far side, makes it look like a bullseye. It's the first thing you'd notice. All sorts of astral travelers claimed that they had left their bodies and flown out around the moon, but none of them ever seemed to have noticed that crater or indeed anything else that wasn't already known to science. There's an old joke about mysticism that it begins in mist, it ends in schism, and puts I right at the center, calling attention to the fact that many mystical beliefs tell you much more about the need of people to feel good about themselves than about any desire to better understand the wider world. But in this case, in terms of believing that it's all one world, the mystics appear to have been right. To explain what I mean, imagine that you're standing outside on a starry night. You can see the hills of Earth and the starry sky above. And you're asking the question, well, how, as a matter of fact, would I ever think that all this is part of the same system and that it somehow involves myself? Let's start with you, the observer. You're a biological creature. You arose on planet Earth. And you and every other form of life here today are all related. We're all relatives. It's all the same system of life. In the violent early days of the Earth, it's possible that some other form of life might have originated and died out. We don't know. But we do know that all the life that has survived throughout the accessible record is related. One way you can tell that, for instance, is, the DNA molecule's a double helix. So like a spiral staircase, it has to either rotate in a clockwise or counterclockwise way. All DNA of all creatures rotates the same way, just one of many forms of evidence that here on Earth, life is indeed one system. What about the starry sky? When you look up there, most of the stars you see are hundreds to thousands of light years away. Are they part of the same system? Well, yeah, it turns out they and the sun are all formed in the same galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, and everything's made of the same elements. Once spectroscopy was invented, scientists began looking at the light from stars to determine what the elements were, comparing it to elements that were burned in the laboratory and also looked at through the spectrometer, and they found that sure enough it's the same elements everywhere. In fact, helium, which is one of the most abundant elements in the universe, was discovered on the sun by taking a spectrum of the sun before it was identified on Earth. That's why it's called helium, after the Greek god of the sun, whose name was Helios. Now, the Milky Way galaxy is enormous, 100,000 light years across, more than 100 billion stars. If the Milky Way were the whole universe, we could study it far into the future and still only know a small aspect of the whole, but it's only one among a great many galaxies. A century ago, when Edwin Hubble was studying the Andromeda galaxy, a little over 2 million light years away, and a pair with the Milky Way, a lot of galaxies are in pairs and groups. He called the Milky Way and these other galaxies island universes, and he wasn't even sure whether they would obey the same laws of nature or be made of the same stuff, but turns out they are. It's all one universe. Now, Hubble's observations contributed to the discovery that the universe is expanding, space expanding and carrying the distant galaxies farther away from one another. If you run the clock back on that expansion, you come to a situation in which the entire universe, all of the space and time and matter and energy that we observe, would have been concentrated in a single point smaller than an atom. You can think of it, let's say, as a bubble of space or as a quantum flux event. And everything we see deployed across the observable universe today originated in that tiny single point. So the whole observable universe, too, is indeed one system. Now, all this scientific research that has demonstrated that the substance of the universe and the so-called physical laws determining how it operates are the same throughout the universe has not, of course, just been a matter of applying known physical principles to the universe. Science has also learned a lot in return, all the way to exotic phenomena like colliding black holes. There are gravity wave observatories here on Earth now that can detect the ripples in space-time that are set off when massive objects, such as a pair of black holes, which is called the binary black hole system, collide. That's pretty exotic, and it's not something you could do in a laboratory here on Earth, and it's not something really that you can entirely think up on your own. So I expect that even Lao Tzu, if he were around today, would concede that there are times when you are better off to look out the window. Thanks for listening. See you next time.